Hello, this is part 3 of my videos going through making this Colt 1911. So I'm going to unwrap it in this one. First thing I need to do is put an unwrap modifier on, and when I'm unwrapping it, let's just come out of here a second. What I need to do is just have a look at, because I'm baking a normal map on this, I need to make sure that anywhere that I have anywhere that I have smoothing group changes, I need to make sure that I have UV. My UVs need to be separated along those seams. So, as an example, down here is a smoothing group seam. So this poly here is in a different one to all of these, and obviously there's one here as well. Pretty much anywhere that there's a sharp edge. So all of these would be pretty obvious, and you probably put your UV seams in here anyway. But the other thing that I need to just be careful about is I've got UV seams, smoothing group seams here as well. So that needs to be separated, my UVs from that. And all of these need to be separated. So that should be absolutely fine to do. First thing is, so put my unwrap on, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my unwrap modifier, and I'm going to select these elements. So I'm going to select that element first, and I'm going to flatten it and move it off to one side. Then I'm going to select this element, flatten it and move it off. This one, flatten, move it off. The only reason I'm doing this really is to keep myself a little bit organized. So that's all of the different pieces. So I'll start with doing this main part of the body here. Okay, so I want to grab all of the polys that I'm going to unwrap together. So I'm going to unwrap this, except for, like I said, I don't want any of that, because that's in a different smoothing group. So I want this bit, except that bit also, minus that, and then there's all those on the top, and these bits, and where's that bit? Okay, that's already there. So let's take all of those and relax them, and then I'll just stitch them back together. So I've got that bit, that, and that. So if I select this element now, this is what I've got selected. All of this basically up to where any smoothing group transitions are. So that's all one big piece. Just relax that out. And that's pretty much done. The only thing I would do with this is just double check that everything's in line. So I'd get all of these verts here and then just align them horizontally. Same with all of these ones. Align them horizontally. And I'd probably go through and do that. Certainly with these. It's really important to get these exactly horizontal. If they're supposed to be a straight line, you should make sure that they are definitely a straight line, because it will it will stop any aliasing when you bake your normal map. So your normal map's not going to kind of step down a diagonal. So I'll line those up vertically as well. And maybe these. Okay, so that's that top piece done. Now I'll work on this bit here. So that's just that piece. And that middle piece. So let's just stitch all those together. And I can relax that. So that's not relaxed as well as I wanted it to. I'm just going to make sure that I reset my X form on this object. That can help things relax. And it still doesn't want to relax. So I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to cut this here, and I'll relax these three bits separately like that, and then stitch them back together. So the next bit, that's the front piece, that's fine, don't need to do anything with that. Then I've got all of these pieces here. So I'll select all of those. And in fact they're in here. So I'm just going to take all of that and stitch this bit on the end. So I'll stitch all of this together. That's it, so that's all the way up. I need to make sure that I unstitch this here. So now I've got that bottom surface there, and like I said a second ago, I can't leave this like this because I need to make sure that I unstitch these bits where that's, so this is in different smoothing group to that, which is in different to that. These are all in different smoothing groups, so they all need to be separated in the UVs, otherwise I'll get seams on my normal map. So just separate those out a bit, and then they need to move away from each other. So that can go out here. Bit of a gap, bit of a gap. Like that. Then that piece. That's in its own smoothing group as well. I'm going to position it just there so that I can get a sense of where it is. And this will be the same. They need separating and they need opening out a little bit. So I'll need to do the same with the other side. I'll do that in a second. What else have we got? We've got this back bit. All of this here on the back is all in one smoothing group. So that looks fine. That looks as though the flatten's done that the way we wanted. I think I want to turn all these round the other way. Okay, so that's that piece at the back. And what else have we got? Okay, we've got all these pieces in here. So let's find that piece. And what I do with these pieces is just move them. I can't stitch them because they're in different smoothing groups, but I tend to move them into the right place anyway, just so that when I'm texturing I kind of know what's going on. So I've got that piece. What you can do is you can stitch it in like that, sometimes faster, and then just unstitch them again. So now I just need to work out how I'm going to put this together. In a way that's logical enough for me to be able to follow it. So when I'm texturing this, at least, although these are separated, at least I know that whatever I paint down here is going to follow along on here. Same here, when I paint something down there, it's going to follow along down here. And again, I want to be really careful about all this stuff and make sure that it is exactly vertical or horizontal. It'll make life a lot easier when you're texturing, and it'll also make your bake a bit nicer. So I need to go and do that with all of these. What else have we got? We've got these bits here. And these bits here as well. Maybe they can go in there. These can probably scale down a bit. So you don't necessarily have to keep your scale exactly 1:1. Maybe they can go under. And I think that's all of the bits in here. Oh no, I've missed those bits. So that'll be these pieces here. That bit and that bit. And this is where I might start to those are just going to have to come down here, I think, because that's just the way that it's going to pack best. And I'll maybe rotate them as well. Maybe I won't. Just scale them. So with all of this, it's a case of finding the best trade-off between things being packed well and also keeping things as logical as you can, so that at least you can find the bits that you're looking for. That bit's probably okay how it is. I could obviously mirror some of this, but I don't think I'm going to, simply because I think you'll see this area of the gun quite a lot when it's behind you like this. I don't really want the texture there mirrored on that side. In terms of this, there's writing down the side of this gun, so it has a load of stuff saying what year it was made and things like that, and also the texture on the two sides is slightly different, so that's why I'm not mirroring that part. This can probably be mirrored. What I might do is just cut a seam straight down the middle like that, or you might rather cut a seam, if this was for a first person game, you might rather cut the seam there so that it's more out of the way. So yeah, I would probably cut the seam down there, just straight down the middle for this. So I'm going to mirror that side. So I just need to flip that, oops, that way, upside down, and put that over the top. It doesn't look like I've cut the seam in the right place, actually. I think that's where I wanted it. So let's just stitch. Stitch that one back. And I presume it's that one. Yep, that looks down the middle. Okay, I'm going to relax these again. So you can see the sort of annoying problems you have with this. That one seems to be relaxing alright. That one definitely doesn't want to relax. Let's flip it. And then flip it again. And this is just going to be one of these annoying things that I'm going to have to sort out manually now. So I'm going to have to straighten all of these out, straighten all of those out, and probably actually come up here one by one, straightening these out. Okay, so that's straightened out now. There's actually two things on top of each other there. So you could have done that by copying and pasting it, but that tends to make a mess if you copy and paste the UVs. The other way you could have done it would be to just delete those polys and just mirror them from that side. That's probably the quickest way of doing it, actually. But that'll do for this. Piece is going to go at the front. I'm just positioning stuff roughly so that I know exactly where it is. Let's have a look at what all these pieces are. Okay, so this is all the inside here. Now I just want to check my smoothing groups in there because I'm not completely sure they're right. I want everything in here to be in one smoothing group and it isn't. So I don't want them in smoothing group 1. Put them all into smoothing group 2 because I just want that to all kind of be a nice smooth curve in there. Right, all I need to do now, I can actually probably unwrap this all as one thing, but I just need to work out where I'm going to cut the seam. So I think I'll select all those polys. And let's relax those. Stitch them together. And I think I'm going to put the seam right here, because when I'm looking at this from first person, I'm never really going to see that. So I think that's where I'm going to cut the seam and try and keep the rest of it all together like this. Okay, so I just need to make a decision about what I want to do with this. I can either leave it like that, or I can maybe cut some more seams into it here and here. Or the other thing that I could potentially do is I could straighten it out like this. I don't think I'm going to do that because I think that's warping it a little too much. I think I'm just going to leave this. In fact, I think what I'm going to do with this is to cut some extra seams in it. I think I'm just going to put some seams here, here, here and here. And then just stitch those back up. So that'll be inside there. That'll be inside there. Then that's that side. And that's that side. So I just need to think about how I want to pack that as well. Maybe something like this. And I think I'll mirror those. Make sure these are nice and straight. Might as well scale that up a tiny bit and use up the space. Okay. Let's just straighten that out as well, as much as I can. That one's okay. So at least I know that these pieces are these pieces in here. I don't want that so close up there, so I need to be a bit careful about that. So leave plenty of room for padding. Yep, I think that's about as good as that bit's going to get. Oh, I just noticed there's a piece just there. So these bits are going to be in here. So the inside of that. I'm going to leave them unwrapped as they are, in terms of where the seams are. So ideally it'd be nice to pack these bits in there, but I'm not sure they're going to fit in there. I'm just going to spin that the other way, and actually I don't think I'm going to mirror those. I might mirror those so they can go on top of each other. I'll straighten that out. Even though it's going to warp the texture slightly, it'll get rid of any aliasing on the normal map, so that'll be better. These probably need to stay as they are. So I'm not sure where I'm going to pack that yet. And then I've got all these pieces, so these are the little, this thing at the front. There's probably a couple of edges there actually that I could get rid of. I'll leave them there. I think sometimes leaving the odd edge just for the sake of having some symmetry isn't the worst thing in the world. So I'm going to stitch these up. Just so that I get them all in the right position. I think that's all of them. And then I'll unstitch them again. And relax that. And again, I'm going to straighten them out. So that can probably, what I can do is stick that up there, that one over there. And I think this could all go into there like that. I need to make sure they all line up. Again, fair amount of padding everywhere. And that's it. So I need to do this part now and just mirror it over to that side. Okay, those are the last bits put into place. Actually, I just need to make sure that these are all snapped together like that. So I've just placed everything roughly where it's going to go in on my UV, so I know when I'm texturing these bits that I know that this is the back, and I can kind of work out which bit of the back all this stuff is. Again, I want to make sure all this stuff, if it should be straight, then I need to make sure it really is exactly straight. So when you're doing your UVs, you just want to be very... It's another one of these things that the same with matching your high poly and your low poly. The better you do with your UVs, the neater you get them, then the easier it's going to be for you to bake your normal map. What I might do is, if I've got something like this where I've got very kind of thin polys, usually I'll just take those and just scale them up in that direction just a bit, just so that I've got a few more pixels to bake the normal map on. Okay, so that's that piece done, and that is the most difficult part of this to unwrap. So that's all of this done, and it should be absolutely perfect for baking on now. There's a few things that we need to do to get ready for the bake, but before I do that, I'm just going to pause this and I'll just unwrap the rest of these objects. Okay, so I've gone through and unwrapped all of these other bits. You can see the scale of this is all off at the moment though, so let's just go to our material editor and get the unwrap checker and apply that to our object, and then just hit that button so that we can see the checker pattern in Max. And what I'll do as well is I'll just go into here and maybe up the tiling something like 50, or maybe 30 is enough actually. So I want these squares need to be consistent in size over everything, unless I specifically want to res up or res down a certain area. So for example, this area here would be miles more high res texture than this area here. So all I need to do is, I mean, it should be fairly obvious anyway, just by looking at this. For example, I know that these pieces fit into that hole there, so something like that must be about the correct res. And now I just need to pack everything together. So if I'm going to put that there, I might as well res it up a little bit and take up the space there. Although in fact, I think what I'll do is keep it a bit lower, and then I'm going to use this bottom part as for some of the space for some of the cylinders. So this is a little thing that sits on the front. It kind of sits on there like that. So I know it's about that size. So I'll just need to find somewhere to pack it. This is the bit that I want to talk about a little. This is the inside of the gun here. So So what I've done is I've added a edge loop through there. There's probably some bits that are slightly clipping there. Actually, I need to go into my low poly and just make sure I get rid of, yeah, there are some edges clipping through slightly. So I need to go into my low poly and just move those out of the way a tiny bit. But anyway, I've put an edge in here, around here. And the reason that I've done that is because if we get this to the right size, so that the squares are kind of consistent with how they are on the outside. So about there looks right. I can probably tell because that circle should be sort of like that and fit in there. Okay, so that's consistent. The thing with this is we're very rarely going to see the inside of this, and it's taking up a huge amount of space on our UVs. It's taking up, this object here is taking up almost as much space as all of this part, the bit that we're going to see loads of. So it's just not worth that UV space. So what I've done is I've cut a seam here, and I'm just going to take all of these bits. So now this is the inside, so it's not just around the inside. We're still going to keep that high res, but then once you get inside the gun, I'm just going to res it right down like that. And maybe I'll res it up a little bit and just find a way of it fitting in like that. Okay, so now this has got a much lower res texture, as you can see, than the rest of the gun. But that's okay, because we'll hardly ever see it. It's possible, I think this line here would probably be better actually pushed a few centimeters back inside to a kind of around there. But now if you have a look at this piece, it's not taking up all of that resolution that it was taking up before. Another thing that's worth noting is when you've got things like this and you've got a cylinder with nothing inside it, you might as well get something and fit it in and fill the gap in there, use it for something. So that might as well res up a little bit to be consistent with that. It's just a case of getting everything as square as you can. The more square you get it, obviously, the easier it'll be to fit everything together. So I've got this last piece. Which I believe is probably about that size, like that. So maybe that can go there. So bring this down the bottom as well. These pieces can maybe come down here. Oh, and I've missed a couple of pieces as well. I'll just sort them out. Okay, so I'm going to leave this as it is. Obviously this isn't great in terms of it's not square, but I'm imagining that there is the rest of the gun to do in here. So I'm just going to pack that into the UV space. So there's a lot of gaps in this. That I definitely wouldn't want to leave as they are. This isn't too bad now. I would probably want to fit something in up here, and obviously I'd need to fill in all the rest of the gaps with the rest of my gun. But it's trying to find a balance between keeping everything logically placed and using every single little space that you can. The other thing is just make sure that everything's got a reasonable amount of padding, so a reasonable amount of space around it. So I'm just going to separate those out a little bit further, like that. So you can scale things up and down a bit, but not too much. You want to keep everything generally the same. If you think things just pack in a lot better scaled up, you know, just by scaling them up by 10% or so, then that's fine. Just don't scale things massively out from each other. Okay, I'm going to call that done. I want to sort out this space up here with something. In fact, that's probably was supposed to be mirrored down here. Yeah. That's getting there. So I need to fill in that space and then of course use the rest of this space for the rest of my gun. The other thing I want to point out is just where I've cut these cylinders. So I've got my seams at the bottom out of the way where people aren't going to see them. So the seam isn't just down the side here. For this one, I've cut the seam at the top because I think if you look at the gun that's the angle you're most likely to see the front of the gun from. So the seam's most out of the way if it's on the top surface there. Whereas with these cylinders, it's more out of the way if it's at the bottom. So everything is lined up and symmetrical. Okay, the absolute last thing that I need to do, I should probably have a cap actually on that cylinder as well. I'll leave that for now, but I probably would need to cap that. The last thing that I'm going to do before I can bake is I can't leave these things overlapping. So if I go to select at the top and select overlapped polys, any of these polys that are overlapped, I need to move them off by 1 UV. So what I'm going to do is just select one of them, one of the elements that I know is overlapped, and just put that absolute relative typing on and just type in 1, and that'll move it exactly 1 off. So I know all of this stuff. I'm going to grab all of that, and then I'm going to go into here and ungrab 1/2 of it. In fact, let's leave that half in there. So I'll ungrab all of those, In fact, no, sorry, is that one I want to leave. And then just offset them by 1. We've got all of this is overlapping, so let's leave this half where it is. And offset those by 1. This one needs to offset by 1. Let's do it again. Tools, select overlap polys. So I've got that one, that one, that one. Select overlap polys, and that looks like I've got all of them. I know, I've still not moved that one. Select overlap polys. Okay, so nothing's overlapping now. The texture will be the same, so anything that's in this space will have the same texture as it's got here, because it's moved exactly 1 off to the right hand side. This is now ready for baking. So that you can see that's nice and neatly unwrapped. This has taken me the best part of an hour to unwrap that. So it is quite a time consuming task. I'd say the whole gun would probably take 2 or 3 hours, but everything's really neat and tidy in our UVs, and everything's absolutely perfectly set up. Everything's in nice straight lines, so when we do bake this down, hopefully we're just going to bake this, which I'll do in the next video, and we won't have any problems with the bake. So if you're still confused about unwrapping, hopefully, I know this video's been long, but hopefully just watching the whole process of how I would go about doing this has maybe helped you a bit.